Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into some really fascinating territory. We're talking about consciousness and quantum physics and how they might intersect.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic. And you, our listener, have sent over some really thought-provoking material on this. It's often called an unsettled frontier, and for good reason.
Absolutely. It really pushes up against what we think we know, doesn't it? About, well, reality itself in our own minds.
It does. Our everyday intuition just doesn't quite cut it here.
So our mission today really is to unpack some of the main ideas. We want to explore these potential links you flagged up, but, try to keep it clear or not get too lost in the weeds.
Right. A concise exploration, sort of mapping out this edge of the known where things get pretty weird and assumptions get challenged.
Okay, so where do we start? I guess we need to touch on the quantum realm itself first, right?
Before we can even talk about consciousness getting involved, we need a feel for what quantum mechanics actually tells us about the universe at its smallest scales.
And it's not like our normal world at all, is it? It's probabilistic, interconnected.
Very much so. It operates on fundamentally different rules.
Okay.
Things aren't always definite down there.
Which brings us to that concept. Superposition.
Ah, yes, superposition. It's a core idea. Basically, a particle, like an electron, doesn't have to be in one specific state, like having a specific spin, until you measure it.
So before you look, it's what? Both?
Kind of, yeah. It exists in this fuzzy state of potentiality. It holds multiple possibilities at the same time. Think of a spinning coin while it's spinning. It's not heads or tails. It's sort of potentially both.
Until it lands.
Precisely. Until something interacts with it in a way that forces a choice. Measurement, in quantum terms. This superposition idea is completely alien to our classical way of thinking, where a thing is either here or there, not both.
Okay, so that's superposition. But then there's the act of looking, the observation part. That's where it gets even stranger, I think.
Right. This is arguably the most, deeply unsettling aspect, as your sources put it. The role of measurement, or observation. It seems like the very act of measuring a quantum property forces it out of that fuzzy superposition.
Forces it to choose.
Yes, the wave function, which describes all those possibilities, seems to suddenly collapse. The particle instantly picks one definite state. Say, you measure an electron's position. It was potentially in many places, but boom, you measure it, and it appears right here.
Wait, the wave function collapse.
That's the wave function collapse, and the huge nagging question that follows is, what counts as a measurement? What kind of interaction causes this collapse?
Is it a Geiger counter, a photon hitting it?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the leap, isn't it? Could it be us? Could conscious awareness itself be the key?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question, or perhaps trillion-dollar question in this field. Could our conscious observation be the thing that resolves quantum uncertainty, turns potentiality into actuality?
And people actually argue for that consciousness plays an active role.
Well, yes. Some interpretations, especially some of the earlier ones proposed by pioneers like von Neumann or Wigner, did suggest that consciousness is somehow special, that it's uniquely capable of completing the measurement process and collapsing the wave function.
So in that view, reality needs a conscious observer to become fully concrete at the quantum level.
That's the implication, yes. Consciousness isn't just a passive spectator. It's an active participant in, making reality real.
Wow. Okay, but that's not the only view, is it? There's the more standard materialist take.
Correct. The more common view nowadays, or at least a very prominent one, leans on something called decoherence. The idea here is that you don't need consciousness specifically.
So what causes collapse then?
Any interaction with a larger, messier environment. When a delicate quantum system bumps into, say, air molecules or interacts with a large measuring device, its quantum fuzziness, its superposition gets disrupted and spread out into the environment very quickly.
Like a ripple smoothing out.
Kind of, yeah. It effectively looks like a collapse into a single state, because the interference patterns that reveal superposition are lost. From this perspective, consciousness is just a complex brain process, and it's the physical interaction of the measuring device, or even just the environment, that does the job. No spooky mind action needed.
But does decoherence fully solve the measurement problem? I mean, why that specific outcome?
That's the thing. Decoherence explains how superposition appears to vanish, but many argue it doesn't fully explain why we experience one specific outcome out of all possibilities. So as your source notes, the measurement problem persists, really, regardless of which interpretation you lean towards. It's still a foundational puzzle.
Okay, so the debate is very much alive. Now, going beyond just does consciousness cause collapse, Some theories try to get more specific, right? Like, how could consciousness and quantum mechanics actually be linked physically?
Indeed. We're moving into more speculative territory now. But yes, some bold thinkers, as the material calls them, are trying to build concrete models.
And the big one mentioned is ORCH-OR, Orchestrated Objective Reduction.
Yes, ORCH-OR, proposed by physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. It's definitely intricate and, you could say, quite radical.
Radical how? What's the core idea?
Well, it suggests that consciousness isn't just the result of complex classical computations between neurons, the usual electrical and chemical signals.
Okay.
Instead, ORCH-OR proposes that consciousness arises from actual quantum computations happening inside the neurons, specifically within tiny structures called microtubules.
Microtubules, those are like the scaffolding inside cells.
Exactly. They form the neuron's cytoskeleton. The theory posits that quantum coherence maintaining that fuzzy superposition state can occur within these microtubules for brief periods.
And that's where consciousness happens, in quantum events within these tiny tubes.
That's the claim. Specifically, Penrose proposes a mechanism called objective reduction, a type of wave function collapse that he argues happens spontaneously when a quantum system reaches a certain threshold of complexity or spacetime difference. Hameroff suggests this process is orchestrated within the microtubules by the connections between neurons, the synaptic inputs. And these moments of objective reduction are, supposedly, the moments of conscious experience.
So it's trying to find a physical quantum basis for subjective experience right inside the brain's structure. But you said it's speculative?
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to stress that. It's a hypothesis at the cutting edge, as the source says. It faces significant challenges, like how the brain could maintain delicate quantum coherence in its warm, wet environment. It's fascinating. It's mathematically driven by Penrose's ideas, but it is not mainstream accepted science at this point.
Got it. An intriguing possibility, but still very much a hypothesis. Now, the sources also bring in a totally different angle with Walter Russell.
Yes, Walter Russell. His perspective comes from a completely different place, not starting with physics and trying to find consciousness, but starting with consciousness itself.
How so? What was his core idea?
Russell, based on his own sort of mystical or profound experiences, proposed that the universe is fundamentally mental, that everything we perceive as physical reality is essentially an idea in the mind of the universal one, as he might put it.
So consciousness isn't something that pops out of matter?
No, for Russell, consciousness is the primary thing. It's the prime mover, the fundamental ground of being. Matter, energy, space, time, these are all secondary manifestations of consciousness, or within consciousness.
Okay, that's a big inversion of the usual view. How does that connect back to quantum physics then?
Well, if you start from the premise that consciousness is fundamental, then the strange role of the observer in quantum mechanics starts to look, well, less strange, maybe even expected.
Because consciousness is already woven into the fabric of reality.
Exactly. If the universe itself is, at its root, a conscious or mental phenomenon, then it makes intuitive sense that our individual consciousness interacting with it would play a role in how its potential states become definite realities. The observer effect seems almost natural in that framework.
So while Russell wasn't using quantum jargon, his philosophical stance kind of aligns with the implications of the observer effect.
You could say that, yes. His framework provides a context where the apparent link between observation and reality in quantum physics makes intuitive sense. It suggests the quantum realm might be where we're getting a glimpse of this underlying mental or conscious nature of reality, where consciousness is inherently involved in the process of manifestation of things coming into being.
It's fascinating comparing that to ORCH-OR. One looks for quantum mechanics inside the brain to explain consciousness. The other sees quantum mechanics as reflecting a universal consciousness.
Precisely. Two very different approaches tackling the same fundamental mystery from opposite ends, both trying to bridge that gap between our inner world and the outer world's fundamental rules.
There's a quote mentioned from someone named Zoran that seems relevant here. You argue whether the eye sees the light, or the light needs the eye to be seen to be real. Perhaps the eye and the light are but two notes in the same cosmic chord, vibrating the universe into being.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It really speaks to this idea of interconnectedness, doesn't it? That maybe observer and observed aren't separate things, but interdependent parts of a single process, a single reality unfolding.
Yeah, not cause and effect, but maybe
Co-creation.
Something like that. It avoids placing primacy on one or the other, suggesting they arise together.
So after all this, where do we stand? We've got quantum weirdness, the measurement problem, consciousness potentially playing a role, specific theories like Orchoir and philosophical frames like Russell's, it still feels like, well, like a huge mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. And the sources rightly emphasize that. We're left with profound questions. Is consciousness just a very complex classical process that happens to emerge from brains which interact with the quantum world? Or is it somehow tapping into quantum processes directly, like Orch or R suggests?
Or is there some kind of universal consciousness influencing quantum events, as Russell's ideas might imply? Or maybe it's a feedback loop, something even more complex we haven't grasped yet.
Exactly. These are the big open questions at the heart of this. There are no easy answers here.
But as the material points out, just asking these questions, wrestling with them, that's valuable in itself, right? It's how we push the boundaries.
Absolutely. Engaging with these ideas, even if they seem strange or unproven, is vital. It shows we're not satisfied with easy answers when it comes to the deepest aspects of reality and our place in it.
Which kind of leads perfectly into this final thought experiment. They mentioned the dragon trial.
Ah, yes, the dragon trial. It's a nice reflective exercise.
The idea is next time you look at something, anything really, just pause and consider the possibility. What if your act of looking, your conscious perception, isn't just passively receiving information about something that's already fully formed and out there?
What if, instead, you're actively participating? What if your awareness is helping to draw that specific reality, that object you're seeing, out of a sea of quantum potentiality and into sharp focus?
Shifting from being just an audience member to maybe part of the play?
Precisely. So the question posed to you, the listener, is, how does entertaining that possibility that you're a participant, not just an observer, change how you feel about simply seeing, about interacting with the world every day?
It's definitely a provocative thought to sit with. Does it make the world feel more interconnected, more malleable perhaps, or maybe just stranger?
Something to ponder, certainly. It suggests this deep dive into consciousness and quantum physics isn't just abstract science. It might touch the very essence of how we experience being alive.